Okay, whenever I announce to myself that I'm going to be releasing a new video, I always have a cold. I mean, not always, but it's weird that it's happened more than twice this time. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. The room is a bit of a mess right now. I'm trying to rearrange things so there's like more space for me, my partner, and my dog to walk around. So, excuse the mess. I'll clean it up in a bit. I just wanted to shoot a video while the sun is still up. Now, as I mentioned in my last video, I was going to do a review of this book or like this collection called You Like It Darker by none other than Stephen King himself. Now, there is a lot to unpack in this book, so let's get started. Now, You Like It Darker is actually Stephen King's most recent collection, and it was just released this year, May 2024 to be exact. There are a total of 12 different stories in this book, some of which have been published before, and each story, as always, has its own different length. So for this review to be very cohesive, I mean, my reviews aren't exactly cohesive. They're mostly like all over the place. I am going to be rating them by the 3-star reads, the 4-star reads, and of course the 5-star reads. There are no 2 stars and below, in my opinion, in this collection. So I'm just gonna share what I kind of felt a little bit so-so about and what stories I really liked. And after which, I'll just give my overall thoughts about this collection. Now, if you know me, I really do love Stephen King collections. Probably even more than his standalone novels, with the exception, of course, of The Shining, Pet Cemetery, Revival. I love those books. They're definitely untouchable for me. But in my own humble opinion, I really do think Stephen King really shines when it comes to story collections. Just like his most famous works, Night Shift, Skeleton Crew, 4 Past Midnight. In fact, I did a review of his collection, If It Bleeds, and it was my very first video that I uploaded on this channel. Now, some people might disagree with me on this, but I do believe that the most and only memorable book or story in If It Bleeds was Mr. Harrigan's Phone. The rest, like Life of Chuck, If It Bleeds, the title story, and Rats, I don't even remember what went on. I just remembered Life of Chuck being a little bit weird. For You Like It Darker, I truly believe that the stories here will stick around with me for much longer. Okay, now again, we're gonna start with the middle of the road stories. These 3-star stories were good, not bad. They're just middle of the road, so. Now, slight spoilers ahead, so please proceed with caution. I'm going to start by reviewing Finn. I totally felt like it was a nice and twisty story about an abduction. Now, I know there's nothing nice about an abduction, of course, but I kind of felt for the guy. No one really wants to be like a bad luck magnet and to be wrongfully accused of something and end up being abducted by these really bad guys. I don't think it's a situation anyone wants to be in. But although it was well written and that ending, that ambiguous ending, really started to make me have like all these theories in my head, I do feel like it is a story that, which kind of contradicts what I said a while ago. Like, I do feel like I will forget Finn because there are just other stories that were a lot stronger in this collection. 3 over 5 stars. Now, Red Screen is definitely on the level of Finn for me. Very middle of the road. I know I keep saying that. Very meh. Like, it didn't really do anything. It's not bad. It's not good either. I think it's because there was a lot of themes about cops in this collection, but it does weave in a little bit about wives and even extraterrestrials, so there was a lot going on in this very short story. Now, if you read the story, then maybe you can let me know what you think of my interpretation of it. I kind of interpreted it as the main couple, or like the police guy's marriage being so long, like decades long, and that when his wife hit menopause or something, she kind of became like that alien that he doesn't know anymore, like his once sexy wife who is so desirable and does nothing but care for him, turns into this alien who just nags all the time. I know, major eye roll, but I think that's kind of what I interpreted it as. And the title itself, it's called Red Screen. Could be a symbol of menopause or menstruation in general. Now, it's not like explicitly said, but that's like my interpretation of it. And like, I don't usually mind when there's an ambiguous ending or the lack of world building in Stephen King's books, because he has this tendency to really show and not tell, and like, you as a reader, you wouldn't mind. But the entire story, I don't know, it just felt a little bit half-baked for me. There are definitely, again, stronger stories in this collection that makes Red Screen, unfortunately, so forgettable. 3/5 stars. Now let's go to the 4-star collection, starting with Willy the Weirdo, an underrated gem in this collection. Now, I don't know if you guys managed to read Grandma. I think that Willy the Weirdo is kind of like reminiscent of that, in a way that King once again taps into his inner Lovecraft. Now, I do have a strong feeling that a lot of people will not like Willy the Weirdo or forget about it, and it's going to end up being like a very niche favorite, if that's the right word. I mean, there are more gut-wrenching and anxiety-ridden stories in this book, but Willy the Weirdo is fun and a little bit terrifying. Now, without giving too much away, Willy the Weirdo is strangely about this grandpa, not about Willy himself. But grandpa has a secret, like an eldritch god level secret, and he's been keeping it for centuries. And little Willy is unfortunate enough to be caught in his crosshairs. Now, unlike Grandma, which really created an atmosphere that was almost like similar to Cujo, where the whole like the house felt so thrilling and you can't help but feel so anxious about for the kid. In Willy the Weirdo, it is less thrilling, or like not thrilling at all even, and you would have to read between the lines to truly understand this story. But guys, please trust me, it is good. 4/5 stars. Now, another story that I feel like is gonna be an underappreciated gem is Slide and Road. I don't really listen to the masses like what you should do when you're reading a book or a story. You should trust your own gut feeling, and I did really enjoy reading this. I really love me a good road trip goes wrong movie or story in that matter, especially when it involves a family, just like The Hills of Ice or something. Because there are kids involved, and I know this sounds so bad, the stakes just seem higher when kids are in danger. Sorry. Now, the story is all about this family who are all aboard Grandpa's old car, and they're on their way to Stephen King's famous town, Castle Rock. They experience like this car trouble, and they all have to go down, and one of the kids witnesses something that he definitely shouldn't have. Now, one common misconception that new readers have of Stephen King is that he does really center around supernatural horror. Probably because a lot of the movies that became popular from Stephen King really involve like this supernatural eldritch horror, eldritch monster or something. In Slide and Road, the real monsters are humans. As you turn each page of Slide and Road, your anxiety just gets greater and greater. The last part, of course, got me cheering for Grandpa in the end, so you wouldn't want to miss this story. 4/5 stars. Now, I am totally biased over Laurie. I love dogs, and I know Stephen King is a dog lover himself, and most recently, I just found out that he moved to Florida. Now, there's no like actual confirmation of this, but I kind of know that Laurie is based off Stephen King's real life and his adorable corgi named Molly. If you guys don't follow Stephen King on social media, I totally recommend that you do. Molly, the thing of evil, she's so adorable. She is a corgi, and he posts a lot of pictures and videos of her. Although Laurie, the dog in the story, is actually of a different breed, you cannot tell me otherwise. This story is definitely dedicated to Molly. Now again, just like Slide and Road, this story is also very short, and like Slide and Road, this story is also very thrilling, and like, oh my gosh, my heart just kept beating for both Lori and her owner. I forgot the name of the main character. Because hello, it involves like a freaking alligator, guys. There's no supernatural horror here. It's an alligator, which is just as scary as a human, although probably less on a lesser extent, or a killer clown. And alligators are just less scary than those. But overall, I really did enjoy this short story. I mean, Lori and her owner does make a cameo in another story in this collection called Rattlesnakes, which we'll get onto a bit. So that's my 4-star group. Now let's talk about the 5-star list in this collection, starting with the 5th step because it happens to be the shortest story on this segment. If you get freaked out by strangers suddenly talking to you in public, then this story will definitely reinforce your fears. Stephen King really said you like it darker with the 5th step because this story is very, very dark, particularly the ending. Again, it's not like in a supernatural way, more like in the humans are unpredictable monsters kind of way. There is also a bit of a callback of one of my favorite Stephen King shorts, which is Last Rung on the Ladder. Like there's a line that the character mentions that. I don't know if it's an expression that is regularly used in the West, or maybe I'm just reading into things, but I'd like to think that it is a callback to that story. It really has a shocking and quite violent ending. Like I literally gasped when I finished the book. When I finished the story. So yeah, 5/5 for this one. Truly Stephen King at his most horrible finest. Woo, we're almost finished with the list. Now, I'm no like story or short story expert or literature expert, but I do believe the stories that I am about to mention are considered novellas. So I'm gonna start with Two Talented Bastards. Two Talented Bastards, for some reason, kind of reminded me of Dreamcatcher, another novel by Stephen King. I read somewhere that it wasn't his favorite, so I kind of liked it. I did think it was a good supernatural horror. I kind of liked the idea of people being stuck in the forest and ghosts or some supernatural being or extraterrestrial like chases them around. But anyway, this story, I thought it would be similar to that. It does have a similarity in a way that there are two guys who go to the forest and discover something they shouldn't have. Now, it's worth noting that this is actually the first story in the whole collection, and it kind of set the tone of the book, and it kind of also like it gave me a lot of confidence about reading the rest of the stories, because if the whole collection started with that banger, like what should I start expecting with the rest of the stories here? Did that make any sense? Now, Two Talented Bastards are obviously about two incredibly talented people. Like they both excel in the arts, and the other guy, he excels in writing. They're not just talented in a way that a niche audience knows who they are. Like think Stephen King. Like even if you're not like an active reader, you would likely know who Stephen King is. He is basically like this pop culture icon at this point. Now, I'm not gonna spoil what happens, but basically the book is like trying to uncover where their talents come from. And it is sort of implied that their talents came from something natural. At first, I kind of thought it's gonna be a deal with the devil kind of thing, like a Faustian kind of story, and I thought it was gonna be cliche like that, and I was super happy that it did not go to that direction. Now, I'm not gonna spoil the context or what happens in the book or where the two talented bastards got their talents, but I will say that I love the commentary on talent and skill, and how Stephen King just basically goes ahead and say that it's okay to suck at doing something. Yeah, that's what I got from the book. It's like right there. I mean, he kind of says it in a nicer way, but I think it's like the reality is like no matter how passionate we are about something, when it's just not for us and we don't have the talent and skill or we're not destined to do it, then we're not going to be able to make a career out of it. Like some people who can't become successful writers or successful singers or successful actors or actresses. It's just not for everyone. Which is, a harsh but true reality. Like, there's only a special group of people that get to achieve, like, pop culture fame all over throughout the years. Now, I know this is a little bit harsh to say, but I kind of think that this is sort of dedicated to Stephen King's son. I mean, Stephen King's son is also a writer, but he hasn't gotten the same fame and notoriety as his father. And I think it's his way of saying that, hey, it's totally fine. You don't need to pressure yourself to be as popular or as great as me. Now, Dreamers is another 5/5 read for me. It kind of reminded me of Revival because of the same mad scientist, you shouldn't be exploring this side of the universe kind of theme. And of course, there's like the not really Lovecraftian creatures, but in somewhat similar, like a toned down version of Revival. The story is centered around this veteran who is really trying to just find a job for himself after the war. And he decides to take on this job with this mad or gentleman scientist that is totally obsessed with like controlling dreams. The story kind of kept me on the edge of my seat because nothing ever good comes out with like these type of experiments, right? Like I've read enough creepypasta stories to know that this type of situation, everything can go wrong, and like you just have this feeling of dread while reading the story. And if there's one thing I learned from Insidious, I don't think that anybody should be messing with the dream world or with anybody's subconscious. Now, the story was well paced, well written, and again had that feeling of dread in the air. It wasn't as good as Two Talented Bastards in my opinion, and Rattlesnakes and the Answer Man, I believe. Yeah, The Answer Man. But it was good. It's still worth giving a 5/5 stars. Okay, now here's an insert. Like, I know I said a while ago that the stories that I would start mentioning are on the longer side. The Turbulence Expert, I have to stand corrected because this is actually on the shorter side. I think that this story will polarize a lot of people. I do believe not a lot of folks would like this story because of the lack of world building, but in my opinion, everything was pretty much explained, and I think like having the mystery hang in the air really brought out the charm in the story. And I think like stretching this book out to like explain like the organization behind the Turbulence Expert and stuff would totally ruin the story for me. I mean, I truly enjoyed the vagueness, the mystery, and the whole concept of a turbulence expert is actually pretty cool. Now, if you think like Stephen King has scared you with all the tricks up his sleeve, then think again. He has scared me with clowns, haunted hotels, the afterlife, Frankenstein-like creatures, shape-shifting creatures, and a weird man who likes to ram his Mercedes in public places. Yes, he scared me with that, but this time he totally freaked me out with the concept of turbulence. That freaking airplane scene is definitely like this trigger warning for anybody who hates riding planes or riding roller coasters, because it was freaking terrifying. I felt like I was reading it in 4D. Now, I have a fun question for anyone who has read the book. Would you ever apply as a turbulence expert? Would it be worth experiencing the Tower of Terror over and over again for the sake of good pay and the welfare of others? Please sound off in the comments. I would love to hear what you think. Now let's talk about The Answer Man, which is another great story of this collection. The story presents a number of questions for you, like if someone could tell you your future exactly as it happens, would you be game enough to like hear it? Like, what if you found out that somebody was going to pass away like real soon, or if your lifelong dream was never going to happen, or if the world was ending in a few days? There were a lot of morals to unpack in The Answer Man, and I really did enjoy reading this story. It's a perfect closing to a novel and definitely is another 5-star read. Like, the main character's story was actually really good and very thought-provoking. If I ever asked or like met the Answer Man, I don't think I would ask him anything, because I'd probably ask him like a question that I don't want to hear the answer to and would start obsessing over it like throughout my entire life. Now, if you ever get the chance to read the story, let me know what you would ask the Answer Man. Now, if the last few stories that I mentioned were 5-star reads, then the last 2 stories that I'm about to talk about are as outstanding 5-star reads. Like, they're the 5-starest of all reads. Now, if you ask me what I like more, although they're like, again, both 5-star reads, and you ask me like, hey, maybe you can make one as your runner-up and one as your number 1 favorite of this collection, then a runner-up would be Rattlesnakes, and then my most favorite story of this collection would be Danny Coughlin's Bad Dream. Now, let me talk about Rattlesnakes for a bit. If you ever wondered what happened to the couple in Cujo, then you would be happy to know that this is actually like a direct sequel of that story. And it has bits and pieces of another Stephen King book called Dumaki. If you haven't read Cujo or are planning to read it in the future, then please do skip this part a bit. The story Rattlesnakes is centered around Vic, who happens to be Tad's dad and Donna's husband. We didn't see a lot of him, obviously, in Cujo because it was Donna and Tad that was stuck in that hot car and went through that very traumatizing ordeal. But this time, Vic does take center stage. And if you know Cujo, then you would also know that the story did end up on a very grim note. And in Stephen King universe, Donna and Vic is going through a pain, or went through a pain, that no parent should ever experience, which is the loss of a child. And it's like several years later, and when I say several years, I mean several years, like in real time. It's the COVID-19 pandemic era, and Vic is obviously still grieving, and the poor man's been through a lot, so he decides to relocate to Florida. Again, another book set in Florida. Now, I went through the story blind, and I didn't really know what to expect. I half expected it to be sort of like Cujo, wherein like rattlesnakes would attack his house and he had like no place to escape, and he had to like defeat them or something. But that wasn't exactly the case. Like, what I thought is a story about survival, about sadness, and a mix of sadness and a mix of grief, and like some rattlesnakes here and there, I got a full freaking horror story. Guys, I kid you not, this was freaking scary. Like, it is like the turn your lights on before you sleep scary. It's terrifying, like ghosts terrifying, haunted house terrifying, haunted strollers terrifying. There were a lot of ghosts in this story. Ghost rattlesnakes, ghost children, ghost strollers, and did I just say ghost rattlesnakes? Yes, there was ghost rattlesnakes. Oh my god. Although ghosts aside, the overall theme of this book is truly about the loss of a child, or children losing their lives at such a young and vulnerable age, and parents having to grasp with all the guilt of that. Now, if you don't want to read Cujo, because obviously I don't think Cujo is for everybody, not many people want to read a book about a rabid Saint Bernard or a rabid dog in general, especially if you're an animal lover, or if you worry about the welfare of children and you find that particularly triggering. So if you want to skip Cujo but still want to go ahead and read Rattlesnakes, I kind of recommend that you can do that, because despite the fact that it is a direct sequel, the first half does summarize what happens in Cujo. And yeah, I think like if there is a Stephen King book that you kind of want to connect to the story more so you can understand everything that's going on, I recommend you read Dumaki instead. So once again, it's a great story. It's definitely a 5/5, but maybe not as unforgettable as Danny Coughlin's Bad Dream. Now, this story is amazing and it just places Stephen King's talent front and center. There's cop drama, corruption, law and order as situations, an Olivia Benson like character, a bad cop, police bullying, and premonitions. Maybe the reason that I love this story a lot is because I am a law and order girly to the core. And to all you SVU fans that for some reason likes SVU but dislikes police propaganda, then you will totally love this. There is also even like a mix of supernatural horror because Danny has like these premonitions, and even a touch of Les Mis because when I was reading the book, I kind of connected that the character of Jalbert, which I confirmed somewhere online is actually another version of Javert from Les Mis. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. And he fits the description to a T. Danny, by the way, is such a great MC. He is a morally good character, sort of like Tanjiro from Demon Slayer, who is nice and really believes in the good in all people, except he kind of has more grit to him, if I must say. And he doesn't, I mean, he does do something like that I totally wouldn't do, but you kind of like, as a reader, really root for him to succeed and have a good ending and eventually be proven innocent, of course. Now, I must say, and to be completely honest, I think that the book might be triggering to anybody who has experienced police corruption in the past, so you might want to be wary about that. It's definitely not an easy read. I was so angry at Jalbert throughout the book, but it's kind of worth the journey, and it kind of takes me back to Mr. Mercedes. The female cop here really reminded me of Holly, but I just know that Holly is a lot better because I know my girl would have believed Danny from day one. So that's it for all the 12 stories, and You Like It Darker. I love this collection a lot. I really think it was the best birthday gift ever. Birthday gift to myself, of course. I think to round the whole thing off, I would give it like a solid 4/5. There's just one great story after another here, and it's definitely worth your time and investment because this hardbound is very expensive. I hear a lot of critics that like when Stephen King releases a book, they tend to always say like, this is King's true return to form and stuff. I think Stephen King has always been a great writer, but this is the book that really calls back to all his great collections in the past. I could totally see Danny Coughlin's Bad Dream being picked up by HBO or something as a series, and maybe somebody would want to pick up The Answer Man. Like, I think that would be a good Amazon Prime series. I don't know why I'm like mentioning very specific streaming services, but I just feel like that show would fit that streaming service. There's just so many great stories here that is waiting for you to unpack and uncover. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope that you stick around and watch my next video. I might just do an unboxing because I did order a figure that is coming next month, so I don't know if you can see. Okay, it's covered by the electric fan, but I have been collecting anime figures, and I have a scale figure coming next month that I'm really excited to unbox, and maybe I'll share that in this channel. But until then, thank you for making it this far. Please leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to, and share the video if you want to, of course, and comment if you have anything to say, and if you have something bad to say, at least be nice about it. Thank you so much for watching again. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.